Michael Fenton asked me to call this meeting of the Maintenance and Development, so I believe it has something to do with, Susan was going to text him to see if he was joining us, speed bumps. Am I correct?
Michael's on.
Mike's
Oh,
on.
Mike, I was going to turn the meeting over to you because it's at your request we're doing this.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris and BJ, for joining us. And I see somebody else on the call ending in 8572. Who's that?
Yeah,
Sure.
it's Mel Kotowski, the lieutenant with Springfield Police.
Hi, Mel. Thanks for coming.
They just set me up with Zoom today, so we're trying to get the so that the camera can view me. But I'm here.
Oh.
Well, thank you for participating. Zoom is a new thing for a lot of us. So basically, thank you, Madam Chair. The impetus for this is that for many years I've been getting. Here, let me turn my camera on here. For many years, I've been getting comments and requests from residents for speed reduction devices in the right-of-way. And those take a lot of different forms, but most commonly as a speed bump. Can also be a raised crosswalk. And the dimensions and the nature of the speed bump, whether it's permanent or temporary, can vary greatly based on the facts and circumstances. So about a year ago, I was reading an article about what Springfield was doing with its new speed hump ordinance. And then I did some research and took a look at what's going on in Holyoke and in Northampton and in Amherst. And I found that all four of those communities, Holyoke, Amherst, Northampton, and now West Springfield, have a really similar ordinance that describes how to allow speed humps in particular rights of way under municipal control, how petitions start, and then what the criteria are for determining whether or not there would be a location that's eligible to have a speed reduction hump in the road. And so I drafted this ordinance in an attempt to mirror what those other communities were doing. I think they're doing it successfully. It does have within it a process by which the petitions can start at the grassroots level. And then once you reach a certain amount of support and signatures from the requisite number of people living on the street and have consulted the appropriate neighborhood councils, then it can go through the process that's summarized in this ordinance in hopes that we can judiciously, but also effectively deploy speed bumps in the city of Springfield. We do have at least a few. There's a raised crosswalk installation that was recently done by Springfield College on Alden Street. And other than that, the examples of speed bumps in the city are far and few between. So I'm trying to balance a public input component with this, along with the desire for the community to see some type of effort from us on speed humps to result in speed reduction. And also make sure that we're not deploying these in all sorts of locations all over the city. I mean, there's all sorts of places where it would be completely inappropriate. Main thoroughfares, streets that have speed limits of 25 or 30 miles an hour would be inappropriate locations. And so we want to, my goal is to create a system where we can judiciously but effectively deploy speed bumps through a public process across the city. And so I, many months ago, and want to thank Chris and police and fire for opining, many months ago submitted the ordinance to them for comment. We did receive some comments from police, fire, and DPW, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but the comments largely express reservations and concerns about the ordinance and what it might mean for the city from a DPW standpoint, as well as from a public safety standpoint, and we want to be cognizant of those perspectives. So I can get into whatever level of detail folks would like about the text of the ordinance, but I would also want to make sure that we give an opportunity, Madam Chair, for DPW, police, and fire to all be heard on this and to speak, particularly with respect to their opposition, if they have any.
Councilor Fenton, did you name specific streets or is more general?
No, it's more general. I mean, there's provisions in here that say where it can't go, and it has to meet the appropriate engineering standards. So for example, you're not going to get a speed bump on Sumner Ave or State Street, but if, for example, there was speeding on Magnolia Terrace or on Laurel Street or on Atwater Road, just to use some streets that I know people live on this call, those are residential streets that would be eligible if there was a grassroots effort and it otherwise complied with all the engineering standards.
Okay, we'll start with you, Commissioner Calvi, because I understand you have limited time.
Yeah, sorry, I have another appointment at 12:30 I need to get to, but my opposition is the wear and tear that these place on the fire apparatus. Usually we're coming into neighborhoods and we're carrying a lot of weight and we're going to fires or things like that or other emergency calls, and the extra braking that needs to be done for the speed bumps, or if you happen to miss one and hit one at speed with a piece of fire apparatus, it can be pretty jarring to the members in the apparatus and very unhelpful to the maintenance requirements of the apparatus. It could cause us to break springs and things like that, which can get pretty pricey to replace and change out.
Okay.
Okay. Mel, you representing the Traffic Commission, or you representing the Police Department?
Yes, well, my biggest issue with them is with these other towns, and I know, you know, you can go to other parts of the country, but we have severe weather here. I mean, obviously we have speeding because of people don't abide by signs. You could have a speed bump sign, or I don't know if they actually looked at speed dips instead of speed bumps, where it would be a depression in the road and not a bump in the road. However, like I said, my concern is even with signage and we have severe weather, you're going to have certain aspects of snow that might cover it. I would like to know for New England, and not compared to any other part of the country, what effects they had on crashes and motor vehicle damage. Because every weekend we're out enforcing all sorts of traffic violations, drag racing and stuff like that. A lot of these cars are too low to go over a speed bump. And when they're too low, they learn, as if you see, and I'm sure you all drive, so you all know, when you get behind a motor vehicle that is very low, they'll go up a driveway on an angle so that their tire touches first, which generally will take them out of their lane or possibly into somebody else's lane. People learn to go around them. If they do put them up, if they decide to put it in front of somebody's house, are they gonna erect something where they can't go across somebody's lawn? Because those would be issues. But and clearing for weather, I'll let the deputy or the signal,
DPW?
yes,
Yeah.
DPW get into that. But as far as plowing, I'm sure it can become an issue if they can't see where they are. But as far as enforcement, we take complaints every day and requests for special attentions on speeding. I don't know if it's something where we could use technology instead of speed bumps in areas where we might be able to invest in something that will capture motor vehicles. I mean, we have cameras all over the city, and there's nothing to say that we have also cams that we use that are portable for different things in areas of complaints, why we couldn't set something up that would be some type of plate reader or a device like that that is going to catch people. Because we have our speed signs, but they have additions that you can add on to those speed signs that actually read the plates on the motor vehicles that go by. And if we could capture, I know we don't want, red light cameras over every intersection, but if it's something that's portable and we can apply it to give us another tool that won't alter the landscape and affect so many things that are the DPW, fire, police responses, that we should look into that. That's all I'm saying. We should look into other alternatives if possible. But I'd be really curious on the towns that have them, how many reported crashes are near those speed bumps, or if they caused any damage.
Chris, did you want to chime in here?
Sure.
Chris,
you, Mel.
before you start, I have to jump off and get to my next meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, okay, and Willie,
Thank you.
So you're the most
Before we have to
important
answer them
person
now.
here, BJ.
yeah,
BJ,
yeah.
you're the most important person.
Well, compared to you, yes, but not to everybody else.
Mike, are you planning to bring this up on the council agenda soon?
We've got some work to do, so I would expect at some point in early fall, but
Okay.
thank you, Commissioner, for attending, and we'll follow up with you based on the due diligence we do after this. Thank you.
All right, everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
BJ.
you. Bye.
No problem. Number one, Paul Tudhill, I see you're on. I owe you a phone call right after this meeting. I got your message. So I just wanted to let Paul know.
Okay.
Number one thing that Mel mentioned, red light cameras. I believe the legislature in Massachusetts just passed probably 3 or 4 months ago, the approval for those types of devices in the state. Back X amount of years ago, we were looking at that, and this is more general around the city. I was 100% against it because it was really being portrayed as a money grab. And, just collecting money for stuff like that. However, with in working with Mel and the traffic division over the years, just the sheer number of accidents that are happening in this city, and especially around intersections, is something that is just, all they're doing is crashing into our equipment. But I think that may be something to look at as well. For those of you who may or may not know, in Long Meadow on William Street, basically at Long Meadow High School, grassy gutter intersection, I want to say 3-4 years ago, a pedestrian was hit and killed in a crosswalk there. They installed a raised crosswalk at that location, and Andy Carr, who's my city engineer, had done the work there to get that installed. And within like 8 months, everybody wanted it ripped out, and it's still there. But if you get a chance and drive by, take a look at what the pavement looks like on both sides. The major complaint now is from the abutters in the area that all they're listening to is bottoming out cars and screeching and slamming brakes. But if you get a chance to take a look at that, there's, as Mike mentioned, he talked about speed bumps, speed humps, raised tables, raised crosswalks. I am not a speed bump, speed hump person of any regards. However, I'm very much in favor of raised crosswalks. And just for subtle differences, something that is much longer when you drive over it, not just, like the speed bumps that you see in parking lots or in Forest Park. And the only difference between the two is that when you do crosswalks, there's a lot more engineering that goes into it, especially in Springfield, where we're dealing with drainage issues. So when you raise something up, you're blocking drainage. So there's a lot more work involved with that. And I am supportive of those types of things. When Mike sent over the ordinance, I went through and put in my 2 cents worth. And Mike, did you share that with everybody, or?
I can. I don't know that I did.
Okay, I can just go through a couple of the items that are on there. One of the things that came up in West Springfield on a roadway, and pick Magnolia Terrace for an example. You put speed bumps on
Magnolia Terrace. Hopefully it's on the list, some list somewhere.
You put it on Magnolia Terrace. What they're finding out in these other towns is people use the next street over. So all that it does, it just diverts the traffic, and that's what they're running into in West Springfield. So when I was looking at the ordinance, Mike, one of the things that I put in there is, depending upon the roadway that's requested, is there's going to have to be some people on the adjoining streets that are part of the process. Because what we don't want to do is have something constructed and then all of a sudden the traffic just moves to an adjoining street. We get those sort of requests all the time through traffic with regard to like one-way streets and things like that. And then all of a sudden, when it becomes a bigger neighborhood issue, everybody's like, well, wait a minute, all you're really trying to do is move your problem from your street to my street. So if we are going through an application process or a petition process, we do want to include the other streets. The process that would be followed in Springfield, if we to go forward with this, is it goes through the Board of Public Works because it's a modification of the street. And it then goes through the Board of Public Works, and then it goes through the City Council. So one of the things that obviously we would look at the location of it. Depending upon what we are talking about here, speed bumps, speed humps, I'm going to say 5 years ago, we looked at something extremely similar on Forest Park Avenue. We went through trial periods. We put barrels out. We did all sorts of things to slow traffic down. It was a great success until we tried to find a location to put them in. And everyone who lived on Forest Park Ave said, I don't want it in front of my house. So when people are going to come and request these things, we then have to make sure, okay, are they requesting it in front of their property or in front of one of their neighbors' properties? Are the neighbors involved? Are they not involved? Versus just, hey, I think we need to throw one on street X to slow people down. So that's going to be part of the review as well. I mentioned in the thing about drainage, and one of the other items that was a complaint was having them at or near driveways. So as people are either pulling in or pulling out, the influence of these things become a little bit of a problem. Mike mentioned Springfield College, their speed table there. It's very poorly constructed. It's a great idea for there. They constructed it very, very poorly for the simple reasons I think they didn't want to deal with some drainage issues. So in one direction, it's very good. In the other direction, it's not so hot.
Hold on a minute, Chris. Mike, did you have your hand up?
Just when Chris is done, not now.
Okay, all right. I thought,
I really like that one at Springfield College.
Counselors, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good idea. I think they cheapened out when they did it because they didn't want to deal with some drainage stuff, because one side of it that's kind of on the south side of Alden Street is basically flat. And then as you move across the street, it really becomes a raised table. And as one of the things that we discussed, and I know it was a discussion I had with Michael way back, is that we wouldn't install them on any streets, especially main streets and on certain streets that are, you know, critical with regard to adjacent to fire, you know, fire stations, hospitals, things like that. And that would be something that we would figure out as we go along. The other issue that has been kind of a complaint in some of the other areas was whether or not at the speed bump location, and if you're doing a raised table, it has to change as well. You kind of sometimes have to have no parking. So what with all of this stuff that I'm talking about, it really becomes away from a simple request as I want a speed bump on my street to slow traffic down, to there's a lot of other things to go into it. So those were a lot of my comments that went into the ordinance that I sent back to Mike. Now, in general, you know, my feelings about it are the same as police and fire. I don't need them to impede any sort of work that we need to do in the city. However, if it is something that's moving forward, I think that there's the modifications that I suggested, and I'm sure that there's a few others as well. You know, what they did in West Springfield was basically they're throwing out some plastic stuff in the street and some plastic, we have them at the entrance to our facility here, portable speed bumps that just go there and they'll sit there for a while. And as I mentioned, what's happening now is people are just going on the other streets, especially around schools. So, and as Mel knows, we probably get emails, you know, at least, you know, 9 or 10 a month of a complaint about speeding up on the street. You know, what can we do to slow speeds down? So it's a chronic problem everywhere in the city. I live on a street that's somewhat of a cut through. I know if we put them on my street, they would just use the other 2 streets surrounding me on that. So that's my biggest concern, is that on some of these, if we were to do some increased, and again, my preference would be to something that would be a little bit more permanent, meaning a raised, either a raised table or a raised crosswalk, that all of a sudden it just doesn't, you know, one of the problems what we have with traffic is traffic doesn't go away. Traffic is just going to move. So all we're going to do is move it to somewhere else if people are trying to get through a neighborhood. And again, if we are in some of these neighborhoods, you know, and Mike, using East Springfield, you know, anything that's off of Page Boulevard that cuts through to like Carew or, you know, any of those places on the upper end, you put it on one of those, somebody just takes the other one. You know, you put it on, you know, Windermere, they're going to take, you know, whatever one of those other streets. So that's a little bit of my nervousness on that. And I added a lot of that information into the ordinance side that Mike sent over. And as I said, for just for purposes, it would go through the, you know, the application will come in, we would review it. If it met the requirements, it would then go through Board of Public Works and then to City Council. So it would just be part of any other, since we're modifying the road, it would be a Board of Public Works versus a traffic commission, because we are not changing we wouldn't be changing the traffic regulation on the street.
Okay.
We would
Mike,
just be modifying the street.
I'm going to ask Jesse or Gomishindo if they have any comments first. Jesse, did you want to chime in?
I'll yield to Mike. Maybe at the end I'll have a couple questions, but.
Gomishindo?
No, I have none.
Okay. Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think that all the comments are very reasonable. And I think that there's a way that we can address all of them in the final draft. Chris, you're just to go through the I'm not going to go one by one, but what I would prefer to do with the comments that you sent is I will just go through and accept the ones that I can accept. And then whatever I want to discuss with you, I'll send back and we can
no
discuss.
problem.
I think the overwhelming majority of what Chris has requested in his red lines are going to be fine with me. And I think that it makes sense for it to go to the Board of Public Works before it comes to City Council. And I don't have any just scanning through them quickly, I don't have any objections to the changes that you proposed. So the objections that we've heard from fire and police and DPW, I think that we can take these all into account. I will reach out to the surrounding towns, specifically Holyoke, Northampton, Amherst, and West Springfield, and ask if they have any data or information about the impacts that it's had on speeding, either positively or negatively, increased accidents and any other issues. With respect to the temporary versus permanent nature of the installations, I intentionally put in here a temporary trial period that's required before anyone can be installed for a period of 90 days. And that would be where we deploy, as Chris was describing, a temporary, probably yellow plastic speed hump that would allow us to test and determine, what are the impacts here? Is it really resulting in, if we put one up on Redland Street, is that just forcing traffic to El Paso, for example?
Right.
Highly likely. And that would allow for a comment period where we can hear not just from the petitioners, and the requirement is that it be signatures of 2/3 of all the registered voters within 300 feet of the location of the proposed speed hump. That's a lot. That's a high bar to even get the petition before the Board of Public Works. That's what I've kind of
Can you
created.
repeat that? Signatures of 2/3 of?
The registered voters within 300 feet of the proposed hump. So
And
you couldn't
who
just.
gets those, Mike?
Well, that would have to be the petitioner, whoever that is. If somebody at 123 Main Street wants to do it, then it would be somebody has to start it, get the signatures, take it to the Board of Public Works, take it to the neighborhood council, make it through the process, and then ultimately, if the board recommends it, then the council can approve it. And
Mike, is that a radius? Is that a 300-foot radius or 300 feet each
Let me see what
direction
I-
of the street?
Let me see what I picked 300 because that's the abutter standard under 40A.
Yeah.
But let me see what I said.
Right,
300
you said
feet on.
it has 300-foot radius. I suggested 5.
Yeah, I know you did. That might be one of the ones I don't accept, but
But it would be in each
That's
direction.
a big
That would
difference.
get that would bring the abutting streets into it as well,
potentially, but maybe not.
Correct. Yeah,
depending on how big the property lines are.
Right.
correct.
Right.
And
So
I'm sorry, Mike, the one thing that you mentioned, this would be one of the items that I would really rely heavily on the neighborhood side as well.
Right.
Because I think it's these sorts of things become you're not just somebody wants a no parking in front of their house. Hey, that's no big deal to anybody else. You do this, you're starting to impact the neighborhood. And that's why I think relying on the neighborhood groups, I think, is going to be as important as well.
I agree completely. And I think that should be a stipulation, that they be consulted and that there be a request for a letter of support from the appropriate neighborhood council. And that'll help us, Chris, get at the issue of, okay, so we've got 2/3 of the people within 300 feet. That's a lot. That's a high bar.
Yes.
And if we get that far, then it goes to the neighborhood council, and then the other residents from an adjoining street would have an opportunity to opine. And by
Right.
the way, if that doesn't solve it, there'll be a temporary trial period for 90 days where if they're impacted, we're going to be getting the calls. We're going to know
Right.
that
Just
the
thinking
traffic
that.
switch from, we're going to know that the traffic switched from Magnolia to Spruceland, right?
Right.
And we're going to be getting calls from people on Spruceland. So that's, I would say, Chris, you and I can work on these changes you proposed, and I think 90% of them are going to be fine. I think 500 feet is a lot. That could, depending on where you are, that could end up with a very large number of registered voters required to sign off. And again, the goal would be to make sure that we're not just hearing from one resident, we're hearing from all the people in the immediate vicinity that would be impacted. We're creating a temporary trial period. We're allowing for neighborhood input, and we're also allowing for DPW to opine on engineering standards. There's I'm looking out my window. There's a big difference between proposing a speed bump on Atwater Road versus Springfield Street. Like, it's
Right.
never going to work on Springfield Street.
Yeah.
And so just from an engineering standpoint and from a safety standpoint. So that's where I'm at. In terms of follow-up, I will reach out to the appropriate departments in the surrounding cities and towns and get whatever comments I can out of them. I will also work with Chris on proving the overwhelming majority of his changes. And then my hope would be that we could get this on some form of council agenda for debate at some point in September. And then I expect once the rest of the members get involved, we'll need probably another committee meeting because there's going to be a lot of the same questions we're asking here today asked
Right.
again.
Well, I think you're going to have to overcome some of the public safety objections.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to talking with police and fire a little bit more about that. I mean, at the end of the day, I recognize the concerns and I think they should be taken into account with respect to where bumps go and how they're designed. But I am a little concerned about just this sort of high level dismissal of the idea of a speed bump anywhere by police and fire. I think a lot of other cities and towns that have large educational institutions and healthcare institutions have found a way to make it work with their public health and safety departments. And we'll consult with them to see what their feedback is. But I don't take the police and fire's comments to mean no speed bumps anywhere. I take them to mean we have to take into account the things that they've raised as concerning. And so that should impact how it ultimately gets implemented, not if it gets implemented. At least that's how I'm looking at it.
Michael, can I say something? It's Mel Kwiatkowski. I just want to address a couple things. As we know, we have in this city, we have over 5,000 crashes that the police take a year in the city. It's very high. And that's attributed to speeding, no doubt, a lot of it, and a lot of it's distracted driving. And I'm not saying a speed bump cannot help in some areas, but what I'm saying is you have people on smooth roads that get in crashes. So I would definitely like to know if near these sites where there are speed bumps or speed dips for that, if there's an increase in crashes. And like Chris said, that if you look at a lot of these, when you go near them, where areas where you have people not paying attention and there's big gouges in them, there's oil on them from, cars rupturing things or rims being popped. But I don't want to create work for myself, but I will so based on, and I could make the suggestion before I think you should even consider a speed bump. I think obviously with engineering, the police could be involved with like a road survey, because basically what we do, if we get a complaint on a street, generally what I do is I'll put a speed board out there, and the speed board will give me a 24-hour data of how many cars went by, what the speeds were, because then we can attack certain times of the day. And we're finding when I break down the data and the graphs, that a lot of it is perception. And I feel for people, because we all live on a street that at times people fly by, you know what I mean? They have a total disregard for the area, and people just speed wherever they go. But I think if we kind of do a survey with the speed board, we can kind of, you'll have data. You'll be able to go to a meeting where I'll be able to give you something, and you'll be like, the lieutenant did this whole week of, traffic going both ways. And during this time, our highest speed was this. Or you might go there and go, you know what? Everybody here, you're correct. The people do use this as a cut through, and people do speed. and let's see what we can do about it. So I think it not to discredit people's complaints, but it'll be more of a science. You know what I mean? We'll have hard data to be able to give the people of what's really going on their street.
And I think, Mel, I think that's perfectly reasonable. There is a provision in the ordinance that anticipates that there would be that kind of feedback. It says within 30 days of the completion of the application, the police, fire, and Department of Public Works will file a report to the Board of Public Works regarding the proposed hump, including impacts on daily and emergency operations of those departments. So if what that means, that gives you the flexibility to do whatever due diligence you think is necessary to make that report. And if that means putting up a speed board, or it means putting up one of those black cords in the road that tracks the number of vehicles, what have you, this ordinance anticipates that you would provide that feedback before it was ever heard.
Okay, I don't have a copy of that. No, that'd be great. That's definitely a plus.
Okay, we'll get you a copy.
Jesse, did you want to ask something?
Sure. I just wanted to say, Madam Chair, I think it's excellent, well-written ordinance. I think the feedback is key. And I was going to just suggest the same thing, that we reach out to public safety agencies in those communities. But, ultimately, I think, we have such an issue with speeding across the city. And, I think we have to take an engineering approach in some cases to slow things down. So I'm 100% behind the proposal with the appropriate edits, and we'll look forward to seeing it on the council floor. Just thank Councilor Fenton for pushing forward and doing the
good work, Mike.
And background work, because I think ultimately we're moving in the right direction of seeing some of those engineering fixes, and hopefully we can see even more in the future.
Yeah, especially Chris said it was a chronic problem, so you do want to try to address some of those chronic issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of impacts from this. And so we want to take all those things into consideration and be diligent about it. When I reach out to the surrounding towns, I'm going to ask them about 4 different variables. I'm going to ask them about impacts that they've seen on traffic, impacts that they've seen on accidents in and around a speed bump, any information they have about the impact on speeding that the bump has had, and any damage that it's caused to the roadway or drainage as a result of the installation of the bump. Those are the 4 things I've taken from today that I'll ask about.
Yeah, well, I think that will give you a lot of answers, that's for sure. So, all right, and at the appropriate time, I'm sure I would like, and I don't know about Councilor Gomez or Councilor Letterman, would probably like to be involved on the ordinance with you. So,
thank you.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions. Chris Signoli, I've got a question for you. It has nothing to do with speed bumps, but
I was just going to ask Mike, do you want me to forward that to Mel that I had my comments on?
Yes, please. Yes,
okay.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you can, and Chris, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, through the chair.
Go ahead.
I will, I'll go through and accept all the ones I can accept, and then I'll send you back the ones that I want to discuss.
Okay. Comisindo, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. We've been with this problem for many, many years in this city. I remember when Bernie Avenue was the racetrack of the city.
Yeah.
And then our rep Rivera worked at the state level to confiscate these vehicles as they were being stopped. I don't know how far that got into it, but even in my street, I'm very afraid the way these individuals are driving the streets, and I live in Laurel Street, and so something needs to be done before kids commence to get run over. And these guys in those soup cars don't give a darn. They're gonna speed them up, And, you know, we might feel that we're gonna hurt somebody in the process, but in war, somebody gets hurt at all times. And what is best, 90 or 10%? 90 in our favor, 10% against. So whatever happens, I'm going to support this ordinance.
Oh, thank you, Gomishin, you always add so much, your experience, you're such an asset on the council. Jesse.
I'm all set, Madam Chair. I think
Okay, well, hang on, Jesse, because what I wanted to ask you, Chris, now that I've got you, Jesse and I have been trying to set up a meeting with you regarding it. It's not speeding, but I believe it's parking, correct, Jesse, on some of the streets near AIC? Is that what
yeah, the hope was
concerned?
we had put a petition forward, Chris, with the ultimate intention of it coming, before this committee and before the traffic committee.
Right.
So never an intent to pass it that night. But the hope was to get everybody appropriate in the room to address those long-standing parking issues over there by AIC.
Well, and I know I sent back a comment on that, which the one thing that I get nervous about when I see things like that the comment came through that that the committee wanted to remove the parking regulations on those streets. The problem is when you make a statement that broad, you remove all of the parking regulations. That means stop signs, handicap parking,
We don't want to do
all
that.
things like that.
Yeah.
So
Couple
it has
things.
to be extremely specific when you're looking to do that. The other issue on those side streets,
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
That's not what it said. That's not what it said.
Okay.
It didn't say to remove all parking regulations.
Oh.
But with that said, the ordinance was just to get the conversation started. The ordinance was never going to be voted on in its current form. So
no, but and on that, Jess, there was one that was submitted for Dunmoreland
yeah,
that has gone through the process. And the issue that's going to happen on those streets now is everybody from AIC is going to park there because they can. And so these residents now are going to have people from the school parking on their streets all day. So, I made that clear on this. I said, look, if you guys want to modify the regulation, I got no problem with that. Just don't call us in 6 months when school's in session and say, everybody's parking in front of my house, because that's what happens with these regulations. The reason why that regulation is there is to prevent the people from doing that. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that, especially on Dunmoreland, because I can guarantee in September, we're going to get hit with all these things. Hey, people are parking on our street. And it's like, well, they can't. So I just want everybody aware of that. They make those changes. That's what's going to happen.
I think that's why it's important to have the meeting,
Yeah.
get the neighborhood council there and just talk about what the solutions are. So hopefully, I think that's what the chair was just looking to ascertain.
Yeah. See if we can set it up. We certainly don't want to alienate all the.
Well, and then the other part of it is that you're going to then need from a petition standpoint, the signatures of the people on those individual streets.
And that goes,
as
would
well.
that go to the traffic commission first?
Yes.
Yeah,
That goes to the traffic commission.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
all
because
right.
we're
well,
modifying the rules and regs on that. So that's
I'll
what,
follow up with some.
the initial one that came through on Dunmoreland Street was, we want to remove all the regulations. It's like, no, you don't. You don't want to remove all the regulations.
well, People have to know.
And because that's what was happening there. And so we ended up having to modify it. So, I just don't, we go through this all the time where people want no parking or removal of no parking. Then it's like, well, wait a minute, I really want it for me. It's like, well, when people are parking there all day for school, we've met a couple of times with AIC, so we've made them aware of it. But if it's allowed now, they're going to be able to do it. So, and I think
get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, well, Mike, thanks for bringing this issue up and great feedback from everybody. And we'll wait and see what all these reports and statistics show. And
Can I say one more thing, please?
Sure.
I'm never in front of so many city councilors at one time, very few. I would like to say for the OHV, the dirt bike ordinance,
Yeah.
we're before the next committee, I would like to be a part of it because there are some, I think, some issues with it that we're gonna have enforcing it as police. So I would like to discuss that with you, so we can, further the process. But I read what there is set up right now, and it really needs like some fine tuning. And I'd like to give you my 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, we'll look forward to hearing that, Mel. We'll make sure you're included. So I think that ends the discussion on the speed humps. And Mike will look forward to what a great job you're doing on this, all the research. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair, for calling the meeting, and thank you to everybody for.
And thanks everybody for attending, and we'll keep everybody informed on the progress.